So let's take you a little bit back through the timeline of all of this, kind of start from the beginning and take you there. It all started in 2023, January 7th, 2023, the night the traffic stop where those 5 former MPD officers are accused of beating Tyre Nichols. According to Memphis police, officers stopped Nichols for reckless driving near Rains and Ross Road. He was pulled from the vehicle, and according to MPD, Nichols ran. Officers eventually caught up with him 2 blocks away. That's where prosecutors say Nichols was kicked, beaten, and then pepper sprayed. We've gone through a lot of what happened in that situation, but now we need to take you through the timeline of kind of the trial of what happened. And so maybe if you didn't start watching the beginning of the trial, maybe you just caught up towards the back end, you didn't understand or maybe didn't see or hear all of the actual trial. So let's get you caught up on what happened. Unlike last year's federal proceedings, this state trial allows for cameras in the courtroom, capturing the emotions on the faces from Tyre Nichols' mother, as well as the former officers, as well as the jury members. Over the past week, we've heard countless hours of testimony and saw some gut-wrenching video and renderings of the fatal traffic stop that we just mentioned. Both sides presented their cases in this trial. The state trial began Monday, April the 28th, with opening statements from both the defense and the prosecution, as well as a powerful statement from Rovon Wells, who is Tyre's mother, who once again had to sit face-to-face with those former officers accused of killing her son. Day 2 saw former MPD officer Desmond Mills testify against his former co-workers, Haley Smith and Bean. The former cop recalled moments leading up to Tyre's beating and what transpired after. It's important to bring up that Mills pled guilty in the federal trial last year, as well as this month's state trial. Day 3 of the state trial brought several unexpected developments. The prosecution called 3 witnesses to the stand, including Special Agent Derek Miller from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Marco Ross, who performed Tyre's autopsy. Ross laid out the impact of the beating, and he said that Tyre suffered deep brain hemorrhages, injuries of the brain usually seen in car crashes and high falls, as well as widespread trauma across his body. Shortly after, the prosecution rested its case, and the defense brought their witnesses, the first of which included a victim of a car break-in and TBI case agent Charles Baker. Much of the questioning focused on Tyre's car at that point. Powerful testimony unfolded on day 4, where witnesses shared insights about the officers and Tyre's final days in the hospital. Several witnesses took the stand, many of them describing the character of the former officers and the former Scorpion Unit members. From pastors to medical staff to fellow officers, day 4 was about painting a clearer picture of who those 3 men were in their community and for their colleagues, according to the defense. After the prosecution rested their case, the defense continued calling witnesses, including forensic pathologist Dr. Jane Turner, who outlined Tyre's diagnosis after his beating. Day 5, day 5 of the state trial is where we're at right now. During day 5 of that state trial is when you got to hear even more testimony. You got to see and hear more of some of the defense's testimonies of what exactly happened. Let's take you through day 5 and get you an idea of what that meant for people who were listening and watching, maybe even in the courtroom. It began with forensic consultant Samantha Spencer, who testified about DNA evidence and blood found on Haley and ex-officer Emmett Martin's boots. Attorneys spent much of the day reviewing body cam footage from the night Nichols was beaten with former law enforcement former police chief John Tisdale and Jared Zwicky, who also trained other law enforcement agencies. They also took the stand. Both of them testified in the federal trial as well. Day 6, the defense rested their case after bringing 4 final witnesses to the stand. Much of the day's testimony focused on whether or not the former officers on trial used excessive or deadly force when dealing with Tyre Nichols. The defense brought in 17 witnesses in total, while the prosecution brought several additional character witnesses, all of whom were former or current law enforcement officers, bringing the total to 22 witnesses between the prosecution and the defense. Saturday's court hearings adjourned shortly before 4 o'clock. The court scheduled for closing arguments and jury instructions taking place at 9 a.m. on Monday. Now, before closing arguments began on day 7 of the state trial, Judge James Jones spent more than an hour instructing the jury on the 7 charges against Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, and Justin Smith, including the second-degree murder, aggravated assault, kidnapping, misconduct, and oppression charges. On day 8 in the state trial, we eagerly awaited a verdict from the jury. They deliberated on the fate of the 3 former officers who faced those charges. Now, they also had 2 official counts of misconduct and official obstruction. If they had been convicted, their sentences would have run concurrently with the federal sentences that they had already received. Day 9 in the state trial is today. And we've been in the courtroom taking a live look at what happened as we were able to hear the verdict from the jury. The verdict is in the state trial of those 3 former MPD officers. And in case you missed it at the very beginning, they are not guilty. Not guilty verdicts is what was received for Jadarius Bean, Justin Smith, and Demetrius Haley in all 7 counts. All of the charges stemming from that deadly traffic stop on January the 7th, 2023. Each man was charged with second-degree murder, assault, kidnapping, official misconduct, as well as oppression. Now let's get to who actually did plead guilty in this case. 2 other former officers involved in this case pleaded guilty in either the state trial or the federal trial. We're talking about Emmett Martin III and Desmond Mills Jr. Mills Jr. has pleaded guilty in both the federal trial and in the state trial. A part of his plea deal was that he testify in the trial. Martin III pleaded guilty in August 2024 to federal charges of using excessive force and failing to intervene in the unlawful assault. He also pleaded in conspiring to cover up his use of unlawful force. Prosecutors have recommended Martin be sentenced to 40 years in prison for his part in Nichols' death. Shelby County District Attorney General Steve Mulroy expected Martin to change his plea on the state charges, which Martin's attorney implied he would do. If he did not, then Emmett Martin III's trial would be severed from the other officers.